Hello classy people, this is Josh the Top Hat Gamer, and this week I'm reviewing Hyperlight Drifter. Retro-style indie games are all the rage these days, with games such as Shovel Knight and Undertale helping to bring old-school visuals back to the forefront, along with countless others. Hyperlight Drifter is one such retro-inspired title, but what else does it have to offer besides its throwback style? Let's take a look. Hyperlight Drifter is set in a struggling world, where its various races are suffering simultaneous hardships. Homes have been overrun by enemies, entire townships have been wiped out, and a mysterious dark force lurks ever closer. Players control the titular Drifter, and are tasked with taking down the nefarious forces terrorizing the people. The story seems fairly generic, but it has a very Dark Souls less is more quality to it, thanks to its distinct lack of dialogue, both written and spoken. Characters do interact, and events are relayed to the Drifter, but these are represented as detailed illustrations instead of words, putting an interesting spin on standard conversations, and leaving information just vague enough for the player's mind to take what they're given and fill in the blanks on their own. The world of Hyperlight Drifter is presented to the player in a similarly vague fashion, as conversations clue you into the secret history of the land, giving it a very lived-in feeling as you journey across the various environments, past the decaying remains of gigantic titans and ruined villages alike. The neon hues and detailed pixel art style give Hyperlight Drifter a very unique style, while providing plenty of detail to flesh out the game's universe. The sound design feeds into the uneasy, lonely tone of Hyperlight Drifter nicely, with a sparse, melancholy synth soundtrack as the only thing keeping you company for the majority of your travels. Of course, things ramp up appropriately during the various high-action boss fights, but for the most part, the game's cold visuals and downbeat soundtrack leave you with a very isolated feeling. When you're not on your own in Hyperlight Drifter, you're generally being swarmed by enemies. As a top-down action game with clear inspiration from the likes of the early Legend of Zeldas and more recent games like the Dark Souls series, the core focus of the gameplay is on intense combat. Like Dark Souls, Hyperlight Drifter is all about carefully timed dodging and attacking to clear out the various enemies who want to put an end to you. Attacking has a satisfying, noticeable hit stop to it, making every strike you land feel super meaty and powerful. The responsive controls for both long and close-ranged attacks allow Hyperlight Drifter's combat to feel smooth and fulfilling all around. Dodging around your opponent's various attacks feels a little bit clunky at first, but after adjusting to its very specific recovery time and invincibility frames, it starts to feel pretty rewarding. Dodging a barrage of bullets to circle around an enemy and then wailing on them until they're finished feels incredibly gratifying. Ranged combat comes into the mix as well, as you unlock various firearms throughout your journey. Each weapon has its own unique advantages and disadvantages, and before long, you're almost guaranteed to find a favourite combination to take into battle. Actually using these weapons also takes some getting used to, as you aren't able to move and aim at the same time like other top-down action games would allow. While this can be frustrating at first, getting the hang of the mechanic just means you need to get better at creating space and time to fire off a few shots in the heat of battle. And firing off shots is one of the keys to success, as your firearms are some of the most powerful offensive mechanics in Hyperlight Drifter. The game manages to balance this power in a unique way, asking you to recharge your shots by slashing at enemies and objects with your blade. Getting comfortable with using your firearms is all well and good, but the game makes sure that you're backing that up with at least enough melee combat to help charge your guns. Aside from combat, Hyperlight Drifter's gameplay consists of simply navigating the map. Most areas will task you with beating a boss, who is locked behind a door requiring you to find a certain number of collectibles in each section's numerous dungeons. This is fine in theory, but can get a bit frustrating when your position on the game's map is never as clear as you want it to be, and there are plenty of extremely well hidden paths that you'll need to find in order to move on. I'm not saying these hidden paths should be removed, but if finding them is necessary for progression along the critical path, and not just for side content, then they should at least be fairly simple to find. That or the map needs to be clearer about your position within the world. Finally, the game's bosses are all spectacular, tense encounters that will put your combat skills to the ultimate test. They all utilize unique attacks and patterns, but relying on a solid core of well-timed dodging and counterattacking will usually see you through to a victory. These fights, being the most challenging parts of Hyperlight Drifter, are also the most rewarding to complete, and I've come away from the game feeling like they're easily the highlight. There's still plenty to do aside from fighting the bosses and completing the story, as there are heaps of collectibles to find and upgrades to buy throughout the course of the game. Hyperlight's various upgrades all manage to feel extremely useful too. I always found myself wondering how I made it so far without the latest skill in my arsenal after every visit to the game's central town. All in all, Hyperlight Drifter is an incredibly rewarding experience thanks to its challenging nature and polished gameplay. Sure, moving from fight to fight can get a bit tedious when you're stuck searching for a hidden path, and some of the game's mechanics take a minute or two to get accustomed to, but overall, the eventually satisfying gameplay and unique somber tone makes for an experience worth all the minor frustrations. Hyperlight Drifter gets the top hat gamer rating of excellent. Aside from the occasionally frustrating navigation, I had very few problems with Hyperlight Drifter. Its core combat is satisfying, and the method in which you recharge your most powerful attacks keeps you on the offensive, and incentivizes aggressive yet smart play. If you're into games like Dark Souls or have an urge to play something similar in style to the old Legend of Zelda games, then Hyperlight Drifter might be right up your alley. Thanks for watching. I hope you found the review informative. If you missed last week's review on Headlander, or the top 8 best disembodied heads in video games, click the annotations. Now if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna go ahead and keep drifting.